Hello and welcome to our little class today on Microsoft Access. I wanted to present this class to the group today because we oftentimes run into challenges with spreadsheets. And when we become over invested in a spreadsheet, it can cause us some complications, especially in the world of referential integrity, which, without giving you too much of a technical conversation about, basically means that if you have similar things in different containers, for example, uh, worksheet A, worksheet B, worksheet C, all contain values related to worksheet D, there is a need to keep those references intact. And sometimes spreadsheets aren't really good at that. So I want to take you through some examples today about how we can use Microsoft Access to ease our um, stresses around reporting needs and data integrity, and how to make our spreadsheets a little more useful by maybe introducing them into a database environment. So in the example we're going to use today, we are going to imagine that we were just hired by a small electronic supply store who is getting prepared for some rapid growth. They just landed themselves a big name customer and they need some help because they've been working on some spreadsheets that really just aren't going to meet their needs as the organization grows. So the owner presents you with an Excel spreadsheet and it contains three worksheets: orders, customers, and inventory. Don't worry, we're going to take a look at that spreadsheet here in just a minute. And your boss is asking you to report to them how much each customer spent, and they want that ranked from most to least. So they want their bigger customers at the top. Which customers have never bought anything? So which customers do we have in our database or in our spreadsheet that um, they don't engage us ever? We don't sell them anything. And for some reason, they're very interested in knowing which customers only purchased monitors. So we're going to take a look at that and see if we can determine that by introducing some spreadsheet data into a database. So we're going to go ahead and use a portion of the sample spreadsheet, and we're going to show you how converting that spreadsheet to a database is going to simplify some of those reporting needs for you. All right, so I think what we're going to do is let's pop open the orders spreadsheet that we got from our boss. And I'm going to go through this and I want to point out a few different things to you really quickly here. So you'll see we have three sheets. We have orders, we have customers, and we have inventory. If we look at orders, we see there's a few values up here that we can easily identify. We have order number, product ID, customer ID, quantity, price per unit, tax, and then the total that was billed to the customer. The customer table is pretty simple. It's just the customer ID and the customer name. And the inventory, it appears to be a rolling inventory that they have been maybe manually maintaining, because the spreadsheet is the only thing we have to work with in this case. And we'll see on the inventory, we have the product ID, the name, the selling price, um, opening stock, which is how many are in hand, purchase stock in, so how many have come in, number of units sold, hand in stock. So I want to point out a couple things. So if we go at the order page, we'll see we have the customer ID number, but we don't have a customer name. So in order to get the customer name, we have to find the matching value in the customer sheet. And the same kind of goes for inventory. So in this case, product 102, I don't know what that is, but it applies to inventory. So we have product 102, which we see as a monitor. And then the other thing I'm going to point out really quick is, because one of the things that our boss asked us to do is find out how many monitors have been sold. So what I'm looking at here, I see I have P102 and I have P121, which represent monitors. So it's not just a single instance for monitor. So when we go into the Access database, I'm going to show you how to import this, and then I'm going to show you how to join these things together and make some of these reports. Now that we've taken a look at our orders spreadsheet, let's go ahead and move this information into Microsoft Access. Now, I'm going to do this really simply by right-clicking on an empty space in my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and click New, and I'm going to click Microsoft Access Database. You'll see the database pops up there. I'm just going to name it Orders Example. Now I'm going to go ahead and open this database, and I am going to bring in my Excel spreadsheet data into Access. I do that through an external data import. So I'm going to go to external data and the section import and link. I'm going to do new data source from file, and I'm going to choose Excel. It's going to ask me which file I want. I'm going to browse to my desktop, and I'm going to find orders. I'm going to say open, and I'm going to import the source data into a new table in the current database. So I'm going to say OK. And what it's going to do is it's going to bring up the 3 worksheets that I have listed. I'm going to import each one of them. So I'm going to start with my orders. Now in this case, our spreadsheets, just for demonstration purposes, are fairly simplified. These could be a little more complicated, and you may need to do a little more work to get the data structured the way you want it for the import. But for most purposes, with a simple spreadsheet, everything is going to be the way you want it. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next, and it's asking me, does your spreadsheet contain the column headings for each row of data? And in this case, the answer is yes. So if I uncheck that, you'll see that it'll just make it another line of data. That's not what I want. I want to go ahead and click on first row contains column headings, and that will now be the column heading for my data table. I'll click Next. And from here, it gives me options to customize my import. Since we're doing just an introductory example, I'll just talk about this briefly. But if I wanted to, I could actually skip some of these columns. So let's say, for example, if I know that I don't need to know the tax that was charged, we could skip this if we wanted to. We could just select do not import that field. But for simplicity purposes in this example, I'm just going to go ahead and import everything that it finds. I'm going to click Next. Now, primary key is something in a database that defines it as unique. If you're not sure that there's anything unique about your Excel spreadsheet, you might want to let Access add your primary key. Or you have an option to choose your own primary key or have no primary key at all. In this case, if I look at the orders, I can see that the order number on every row is unique. That's important. So I can actually, if I wanted to, I could say I want order number to be my primary key because each one is unique. Row 1 is different than row 2, which is different than row 3, which is different than row 4. Now, if these were not unique, let's say we had numbers here that were repeated, we could let Access add a primary key, or we can even skip that altogether and then just import the data that's available. But in this case, we know that the order numbers are unique, and because they're unique, they can be our primary key. We're going to go hit Next, and then we're going to import that into orders, and we're going to go ahead and click Finish. And now, voila, I have my orders table. So now I've replicated the information from the Excel spreadsheet into Microsoft Access. Now I'm going to do that for the next 2 tables. So I'm going to do File, Excel. We're going to browse again. We're going to go to the desktop. We're going to find orders. We're going to say open. We're going to say OK. And now we're going to do customers. And I'm going to go through and ask myself the same questions I did before. So in this case, it looks like I have my column headings right where I want them, customer ID, customer name. It looks like I want both of these fields. There's only two, so I want the customer ID and I want the customer name. I'm going to hit next there. And again, my customer ID is unique. I have C1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to C11. I know that as a unique value, so I'm just going to go ahead and let that be my primary key. I'm going to next. I'm going to finish. I'm going to close it. And there's my customers data. And now let's do one more. We're going to do from File, Excel. We're going to browse back to our desktop. And we're going to go to Documents. Oh, Desktop. Orders. Open. OK. And now I want to get my inventory table. It looks like everything still applies. So we're going to say first row contains column headings. Everything looks like it's good there. It looks like we've got some field values that it didn't like. Looks like field 7 is a little bit off. So what we're going to do in this case, so we're going to go to next. And we're going to go all the way over to field 7. Oh, it looks okay there. So we're going to say next. And then we're going to say choose my own primary key. We know product ID is what we want. And then we're going to say finish. And we're going to say close. And what we're going to do here is we're going to look at our inventory table. And we're going to see that like field 4, 5, 6, and 7. For some reason, it didn't like the values that were in the spreadsheet. This is a common occurrence. You might run into this. So let's take a look at the spreadsheet here real quick. And we're going to look at what's going on with those that it didn't like it. So let's see, we're looking at inventory. And it looks like in this case, the two rows in the header kind of threw off the import. So I'm showing this to you on purpose because this is a very common problem where Access looks at something and says, hey, I don't like this. It doesn't look right. So now I have two options. First option is I can go into my Excel spreadsheet and I can fix this. And I can make it so that it's all together. And Access would probably be happy with that. But I don't want to do that. In my mind, that is just not a good use of my time. So I'm just going to go fix this myself. I'm just going to type in open or opening stock. And then I'll go here and I'm going to go purchase / stock in. And then I'm going to go here, number of units sold. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to say hand in stock. And now I've got that corrected. So if you run into a challenge while you're doing a data import, don't panic. Just take a moment to try and understand what the impediment is, and then we can correct it as we go. Okay, so let's go back to what are the reports again that the boss asked for. And we had how much each customer spent ranked from most to least, which customers have never bought anything, and which customers purchased monitors. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at each one of those reports, or what we're going to call queries, and let's see how we come up with that information. All right, welcome back to our Microsoft Access database here. Again, we're looking at our 3 sheets from our Excel spreadsheet we imported: orders, customers, and inventory. Now, we're trying to come up with a report that has the total amount of money spent by each customer ranked from who spent the most to who spent the least. So let's take a look at our data tables here. We have orders, customers, and inventory. So if I want to come up with a total, it looks like I need my orders table, because that does have the total for each order, and it does have the customer ID associated with each order. And in order to get that customer name, I need the customers table. And that also contains a customer ID value, and it has the name of the customer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the top, I'm going to click Create, and I'm going to click Query Design. Now you'll see on the right, it opens up the tables that I have available for my query: customers, inventory, and orders. So all I got to do, I know I want orders for sure, so I double click on it, and I know I want customers, so I double click on that. And look at what Microsoft Access did for me. It drew a line. And at first you might say, gosh, Chester, that's a great line. Why is that interesting to me? Well, the reason why it's interesting is, if you remember when we did our import, we defined the customer ID value in the customers table as a primary key. We decided it was unique. The customer ID value, or the customer ID column, rather, also exists in the orders table. Microsoft Access is smart enough to say, hey, this primary key exists in this table, and makes the assumption and says you probably want to join these tables together. So in the database world, Microsoft Access did something for me called a join. Now, what am I trying to get out of this report? I want the customer name. I know I want all the orders summed up. So up here in this version of Microsoft Access, which is the same as all of yours with the most current version, there's this totals bar here. I'm going to click that, and that adds the total column down to the bottom. And I want to know the customer name, and I want to know how much money they spent. And I also want, maybe I want the customer ID in there. Maybe that would be helpful too for my boss. So I'm going to add customer ID. I kind of want customer ID before customer name. That's not a big problem. I can just drag that over if I wanted to, or I can just make it really easy and I could just change it here. And I can add customer ID there, and then I can add customers, and I can say customer name, and then over here I'm on my orders table and I want total. Now, the reason why I showed you that was not to confuse you. It was to show you what these things represent, right? So here it's telling me customer ID from the customers table. Customers, customer ID. Customer's name from the customers table. And then total from the orders table, right? So now if you look up here, I have this run exclamation point. I'm going to click that, and it's going to give me a query result, or what you might call a report, and it's going to show every order for each customer, and it's just kind of random here. It's kind of spread out. You can see that the customer names are grouped. The total is really in no particular order, and the other thing is they're not summed up in total. Now, you might say to yourself, you know what, Chester, this is good enough. I could drop this into Excel. I can make some totals for my boss, and I'm done. Take me, maybe an extra few minutes, but I'll do that. I could do that manually. No, let's not do that. Let's do it using a function. So I'm going to go back into my query design. And I'm just going to right click here in query 1. I'm going to go back into design view. And what Microsoft Access does is it allows me to use functions similar to Excel. So if you know Excel, you probably are already thinking, I want to use the sum function. If you're not sure what function to use, you can go up here and just ask. You can ask Microsoft Access and say, how do I get total into the total column of my database? And it'll give you some help. In this case, I know I want to use the sum function. If I'm confused about how the syntax works, I can pull that up in help, and it'll show me how the sum function works, and it'll give me a real life example. I already know how it works, so I'm just going to show you real quick. I'm going to put my cursor right in front of the T in total. I'm going to type SUM. I'm going to do an open parenthesis, and I'm going to do a bracket. Anytime that we are dealing with column headings in a database table, they're generally enclosed in brackets. So I'm going to put my closing bracket, and then I'm going to put a parenthesis here, and then I'm going to hit tab, and now I'm going to run my query again, and look, now it's added up each value for each customer. But is that still what my boss wanted? And I know what you're thinking again. You're going, Chester, this is great. This is plenty for me. I'm going to drop this in Excel. I'm going to sort it. I'm going to give this to my boss. Well, let's make it something that we can run over and over again. So I'm going to go back to design view. And then here under sort, I'm going to click descending. Now I'm going to run it again. And now I have exactly what my boss was looking for. I have the name of the customer, and I have how much money they spent with my company ranked from the most to the least. And I've also included my customer ID number there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this query, and I'm going to call it customer orders most expensive to least totaled. You could call it something else if you wanted to. We could call it customer value. We could call it customer order totals sorted. We could call it anything we want. I'm going to go with customers orders total sorted. That seems to make the most sense to me. And then anytime I want to run this query, so let's say I have now all my data in my Access database, and I'm going to add to this, or maybe I want to re-import things or refresh these tables later. All I got to do is double click on that report, and there it is. That's exactly what my boss wanted. Now, how you get this to your boss, we're going to cover at the very end of this. So for right now, I'm going to go to my next query, and I'm going to get that value, knowing that when I'm ready, my customers orders total sorted is right here ready for me. Okay, so now we're working on our next goal from our boss, which was tell me which customers haven't bought anything. So for that, I'm going to show you a different technique in which you can build a query. So in this case, we're going to go back to create, and we're going to go to Query Wizard. Now in Query Wizard, I'm going to do Find Unmatched Query Wizard. So Microsoft Access has a built-in query building tool that is going to be able to get this report for you. So I'm going to say OK, and it's going to ask me, which table or query contains the records you want in the query results? So let's think about that real quick. I'm talking about customers, and I'm talking about which customers have no orders. So the table that I want in my results is customers. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to select customers, next, and now it's saying which customers or which table am I looking to see that there's no customers in. So we already know that that's my orders table, because my orders table is all inclusive. It has the customer numbers of every customer that placed an order for me. So I'm going to select orders. I'm going to select next, and it's going to say, what value in the customers table, customer ID in this case, are you trying to find missing from the orders table? So I'm going to say customer ID again, and I'm going to click my little bracket here with my um, reverse direction arrows, and I'm going to go ahead and create that join. What I'm doing here, if you're a database nerd, I'm creating a left outer join. Or I'm just trying to find what's not in the orders table. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And it's going to say, okay, which values do you want to see in your report? And I'm going to take both. I want customer ID, customer name. I'm going to click next. And it's going to name it for me, customers without matching orders. That's exactly what I want. And I'm going to go ahead and click finish. And here's my list. These are my customers who have never placed an order with me. Again, we're going to come back to this, and I'm going to show you how to put this into something a little bit more usable that you can send off. Okay, so here we are back at our friendly database, and we are working on the last inquiry that our boss gave us, which was show me the customers who have purchased monitors. And that on the surface is a fairly simple inquiry because we have our inventory. So if we look at our inventory sheet here, I just want to take a quick look at the different items that we sell, and I want to see how many different types of monitors are listed here. So I've got monitor stand, that's not a monitor. I do have gaming monitor, that's definitely a monitor. That's a P121 is the product code for that. Let me scroll, looking up, and then I have a plain old monitor. That's going to be a P102. So on the surface, this is a fairly simple inquiry. So I'm going to show you how to build this from the simple perspective. And then I'm going to talk about a more complex way to approach this that would be very helpful if we were dealing with a large data set and many types of monitors. So we're going to start with our query design, and we're going to bring in our friendly tables that we've become familiar with, customers, and we're going to bring in orders. And Microsoft Access did its magic. It joined them up like it did before. I want customer ID, customer name, and then I'm going to add product ID. And then this is where I'm going to define my values. So I'm going to say the product ID needs to be P102 or P121. Tab out of that, and I'm going to run this. And lo and behold, there it is. So I can see that Tollcom Toll Booths and Eve's Beauty Supply are my two companies who have purchased monitors. But is this what my boss asked for? No. What my boss asked for was just the name of the company. He didn't ask for the company to be listed multiple times. Now, we're dealing with a very small amount of data here. So on the surface, this may be perceived as not a concern. But let's imagine that we're dealing with thousands or tens of thousands, or in some cases, hundreds of thousands or millions of lines of data. And this inventory sheet maybe is gigantic. And maybe those two customers have gotten hundreds or thousands of orders. This query wouldn't work. So let's make this a little bit better. So I'm going to go back to my design view. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take away the displaying of the product ID. My boss really isn't interested in that. He didn't ask for it. Then I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to add my totals bar down here. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me the group by clause. So this way now, when I run this, look at that. Now I'm just getting the customer ID and the customer name once. So even though they have multiple orders for monitors, I'm only going to see it one time. So this technically meets the criteria that my boss has set forward. So I'm going to save this. And I'm going to call this customers who made P102 and P121 monitor purchases. The reason why I give it such a long description is because if I'm building this out, I might get to a point where I have dozens or even hundreds of queries. So I want to make sure I know exactly what the query is that I'm running. Now, I'm going to throw you guys for a loop here. Let's go to inventory and let's say that time has gone on and lo and behold, the company added a P164 product, and that's called a super amazing, does everything monitor. And now you're going to say, gosh, Chester, did that break this query? Yes, it did. Because if I have customers who purchase the P164 item, they're not going to appear in this report. And if they're only purchasing P164 monitors, they're going to get missed. So I need to change this a little bit. Now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this really dynamic for us. So I'm going to go back into my design view, and I'm going to save myself a copy of this. So I'm going to say, let's do this. Let's do it this way. Let's do it the safe way. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say copy. Now I'm going to paste it. And it's going to make me a copy of this, right? So we could just leave it what it called itself, copy of. We'll come back and change it. So for simplicity purposes, I'm just going to leave it copy of. So this is the one I'm going to work on right now. So let's go in, and we're going to go into design view. And I want to make this a little more dynamic. And the way I can do that is I can introduce the inventory table into this. If I introduce the inventory table, what you're going to see is it creates another join. So it's going to create a join with the inventory table on product ID in the inventory table to product ID in orders. Now, what I'm going to be able to do with this is something a little more dynamic. So I know that at our company, every type of monitor we sell, the product description ends with the word monitor. Only monitors that we sell end with the product description monitor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, I'm going to introduce another SQL function, or SQL. It's a SQL function, but it's an Excel function also. So I'm going to introduce what's called the write clause. And the write clause is a way to parse a character string to get certain values out of it. Now, if you weren't sure what to do and you wanted to try and do this, you can go right back up to your help bar, and you could say, how can I get the right most values from a column, and you can enter that and you can search on it. If you know the name of the function you want to use, in this case it's the write function, you could pull that up and it'll show you how to use it. And I'm just going to show it to you real quick because I know. So what I'm going to do is we're working on, in this case, we're going to switch to the inventory table, right? Because we're no longer working with orders. So I'm going to say, and why is that? Because the product name is in the inventory table. So I'm going to say, I want write, open my parenthesis, and I'm going to put in my bracket, because as you remember, every time you're referencing a column in a database, it goes into brackets. So I'm going to type in product name. I'm going to close my bracket, and I'm going to put a comma there, and I'm going to count how many letters are in the word monitor. M-O-N-I-T-O-R, 7. So I'm going to say 7. I'm going to close my parenthesis, and then down here where criteria is, I'm just going to put the word monitor. M-O-N-I-T-O-R, monitor. And now I'm going to run this and see what happens. And lo and behold, I get the same results. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the name of this query. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to say, yes, I want to save it. I'm going to right click. I'm going to rename this. And I'm going to say customers who made purchases with monitor in the last part of the, too many, monitor in the, we'll just say product name, and we'll say enter there. So then what I've done now is I've made a way so that my boss can add many different types of monitors to this data table. And as long as it ends in the word monitor, the report's going to go ahead and pick it up. Okay, next we're going to go into a way to send these out to your boss into something usable. So let's do just that. Let's export our reports into Microsoft Excel. And that will make them a lot easier for your boss to look at, and it's just going to be the data they're asking for. So we're back at our friendly database, and you can see the 4 queries that we created. And let's get the boss what they want. So we're going to do customer order total sorted. There's that guy. We're going to go to external data, and we're going to go to the export section. So this is the same place we were when we did our import. So import's on the left, export's a little bit more on the right. We're going to export this to Excel, and I'm just going to put it on my desktop. And I'm just going to keep the name the same, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're going to export that out. Now, let's say that you've got this database set up, and this is what the organization is using now, right? So every day someone is working and they're putting orders and customers and products into this database. Now, if you wanted to, you can save this export step, and you could save it so that when you need to run this again for your boss, all you got to do is go into saved exports, and you can click that and it'll make that Excel sheet for you. You don't even need to pull up this report anymore. And then we're going to do our customers who made purchases with monitor and the product name, because we decided that that was a more accurate way to report on it. We're going to save that export. And then customers without matching orders, we're going to do the same thing there. We're going to say okay. We're going to save it. We're going to export it. And now, if we come over to our desktop, we have our reports right here. Customers who made purchases with monitor, customer order total, customers without. And then from here, if you wanted to, you could open these up in Excel. And if you thought they, might be a little messy, or if you wanted to clean it up a little bit, you could certainly do that. Let's open this one here. We could take a look at it, and it's pretty much about what we expected. It looks just like the data that came out of Microsoft Access. And you could fancy those up if you needed to for your boss. But there is, right there for you, a fairly simple way to take things that are seemingly unrelated in Microsoft Excel and bring them together to put together a comprehensive set of reports. And this is handy for large data sets. So in a lot of the tools and software that we work with here, you will find that a lot of times there are data export capabilities that will send things into a comma delimited file for you. They call them CSV files. You can ingest those right into Microsoft Access, just like we did the Excel spreadsheets, and you can work on them as much as you want. On behalf of the entire technology team here, I just want to say thank you all for taking some time and putting some time aside in your day to learn something new. And we're always happy to get training out to everybody, and to show people how to use some of these tools that we have in our arsenal that a lot of times we forget we even have. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.